Abandon, the untold story of the abortion wars with Dr. Monica Miller. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of Saint Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Dr. Monica Miller. She's a prominent pro-life leader, a pioneer and veteran of pro-life activism dating back to 1976, and founder of Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. She's also an adjunct professor at Sacred Heart Major Seminary in Detroit and author of several published books and articles, including Abandoned, the Untold Story of the Abortion Wars, published by St. Benedict Press, stbenedictpress.com. You can get it wherever you find books. But Dr. Monica Miller, very grateful to have you back here with us on The Simple Truth. How are you today?
I'm glad to be with you, and it's an honor. And I'm really looking forward to talking about this book.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you with us. And yes, very powerful and very important story here in this book. Right on the cover, we get the remark of Dinesh D'Souza saying the best book ever written on abortion. Also was talking with Father Stephen Imbarado, and he said whenever anybody asks him what is the number one book to read about abortion, he points them to this book, Abandoned. What do you think it is that is so powerful about your book in terms of something that the reader walks away with? What's the number one takeaway in your mind that makes this book so important?
The book is focused on the reality of abortion. It's not a philosophical treatise. This is not a book about political policy. You are going to get the front row seat to the victims of abortion. And I know that, the book, and I say the untold story, because the book reveals what the abortion industry itself hopes to keep forever a secret, namely the actual victims of abortion. And I'm telling a story that, I don't hope this doesn't sound like I'm getting on a high horse or something, but that nobody else could tell. Very, very few people, even in the pro-life movement, have had the experiences that I have had. And some people have told me that this book has changed their lives. And so I think that's, the book is an autobiography. In other words, it's first person. I really hope, Jim, that the real character, the real focus isn't me, but the real focus in this book is are the victims of abortion. So hopefully that's answering your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the truth of it is we are living through an ongoing daily mass murder of our littlest brothers and sisters, and at a scale, we're talking about a loss of human life that is like a 9/11 every single day in our nation, that is pretty much going ignored, and hundreds of thousands worldwide every day. A scale that is almost unimaginable. And the story really reads, as you share your story here in this book, Abandoned, as a sane person waking up to this reality, a world that is going insane, and how a sane person grapples with that as the whole world goes crazy around them. And you say here in chapter 4, I think this is one of the big moments for me in the book. You say, I was gripped by a realization. I thought, I'm not living in a normal world anymore. You go on to say that normal could not apply to a world in which the murder of the unborn was protected by law. I could no longer consider myself a normal person. I knew that I could not live my life in the expected way. Babies are being murdered. They are being murdered down the street in my own town. I know about it, and I have to give up my life to do something about it. You also say to be pro-life is to be enveloped by a desperate, agonizing moment in history. An awareness of injustice grips you. You cannot free yourself, and it is a suffering. And so you were honest about this and about the response that was needed at the level of your own conscience and putting your own life, offering your own life to do what seemed to be right every day as you went on in this reality. And then you see the various things that you get into, and it really is a phenomenal read to see it. But it ought to get the reader examining their own conscience and their own response to this time in human history that we're living through. Anything else you can speak to us about each person kind of examining their own conscience as they read this?
Yeah, it's interesting that you focus on that particular page in the book, Jim, because a number of people have told me that my experience of I can't live a normal life anymore was also something that really resonated with them in terms of their response to the injustice of abortion and the sense of, I think even in that section of the book, the sense of alienation that you feel from your own culture, even from your own country. Not to sound unpatriotic, but the words liberty and justice for all just doesn't mean anything to me in regards to the killing of unborn children. I mean, where's the liberty and where's the justice for them when a whole people group is named non-persons, stripped of their right to life, and literally treated like trash? So you feel a certain againstness, if I can put it that way, in the time and in the culture in which you live.
Yeah, and you didn't set out to be a radical, as you say. I had become a radical, and that's just being normal in, again, a world that's going crazy. You would be presented with these, faced with these moments before you. One that you write about in this chapter, abortion and the L train ads, where you're just riding the train in your town and you're seeing advertisements come up, promoting abortion, promoting this murder at local killing centers. And then you're confronted with this and saying, what am I supposed to do in response to it? You had quite a campaign in response to this with just a couple other people, but then you also found yourself individually at times needing to respond by yourself, just kind of learning how to rip the ad down yourself, which wasn't easy. Again, can you speak to a little bit just that sense in the moment of here's something right before you, your conscience is bothered by this, a sense of what do I need to do in the face of this? Most people would probably just find a way to try to ignore it. You couldn't do that. Why do you think that was?
Well, you're referring to the Albany Women's Center, an abortion center in Chicago. So the book takes place in Chicago and then in Milwaukee, because that's where those two cities where I was living during those times. And the Chicago Transit Authority permitted this abortion center to advertise these large placards on the L train platforms in Detroit. I'm sorry, in Chicago. And I just felt there's no way I can just ride the L trains and tolerate their advertising the killing of human life. And so there was, I guess you could say, one of my radical responses was to find a way to neutralize, if we can use that term, the ad. And so I came up with a quick and easy way, especially when the ad was across the tunnel, over the tracks. So we got contact paper and we cut it into the strips that would blot out the name of the abortion center and the phone number of the abortion center. And so my friend Jerry Zeeley, I end that chapter with, frankly, on a very sad note, but regarding Jerry, which is maybe a certain irony there regarding the right to life. But Jerry leaped over the third rail, right? The rail that's alive with electricity, and slapped those contact paper strips on those ads, and that was pretty much the end of the Albany, advertisements on the L train. But my friend Jerry was very depressed, and he committed suicide. And I talk about that at the end of that chapter. I also talk about how Joe Scheidler, everybody in the pro-life movement ought to know who he is. Literally a giant. He was 6'4", in the pro-life movement. Joe Scheidler was the founder of the Pro-Life Action League in Chicago. His son, Eric Scheidler, is now the executive director. And Joe Scheidler had an enormous influence on my development as a pro-life activist. And so Joe was kind of depressed about those ads. And then one day he was riding the L train. He saw that it was all blotted out. He was so overjoyed and put it on his hotline that somebody left the third rail to put those ads out.
Yes. And it is encouraging when people take action, when people of goodwill stand up and say no more to this evil. And they take some good action like that. Others get encouraged by that. In fact, there's almost a contagiousness to that sort of good action. We need more of it. We're going to be right back with Monica. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Dr. Monica Miller, our guest today. We're talking about her book, Abandoned, The Untold Story of the Abortion Wars. You can get it anywhere you find books, also stbenedictpress.com. That's the publisher. And you talk a little bit in that last segment about your friend Jerry, and you write about him in the book, and about his ultimately his suicide and his despair that he falls into here. And there is a sense here that we're in a sense in this time that we're living in. Certainly the greatest victims of this ongoing daily mass murder of abortion are the preborn themselves. They're literally being mass murdered, and there's no chance for them to escape on their own. I remember the comment by Immaculée Ilibagiza, who was hiding there in Rwanda during the genocide in Rwanda. And she talked about abortion, and she said, abortion's worse than the genocide in Rwanda. At least we could run and hide. There's nothing that the unborn can do. And so that is the case. And certainly, the victimization, ripples out from there. How can you imagine something more anti-woman than, getting a mom to think that somehow it's a good idea to her to even murder her own child living, growing within her. But we're all, in a sense, as we live through this, a victim of this in some way. And as you become aware of it, and as you step out and try to do some good in the face of it, to try to push back and ultimately to try to end this evil, you do face some pretty heavy blowback that can be quite lonely. You write a lot in here that gets you to that sense of a real solidarity with the preborn, and being willing to make those sacrifices, giving up your life as their lives are being taken from them. I think even as you write about Joan Andrews Bell in here, very powerful witness in the way that it's described. But I do think about Jerry as you talk about him, and as you conclude even this next chapter, Green Eyes of Hate, and you write this. You write, the ethic that says it is justified to kill another person if he gets in your way is a thing of this world. I thought, I reject this world, and so the world should reject me. To be pro-life is not glamorous. Indeed, many pro-lifers are simple, unsophisticated folks. You go on to say, I learned, expect rejection and do not think another second about it. Can you speak to how you were able to do that, to make that connection, to expect rejection, to be able to handle the persecution, whereas others, maybe it would be too much, too overwhelming, too difficult, even falling into a certain despair as they try to push back against this evil? Anything you can share with us on that?
Well, even Joan Andrews Bell, by the way, she is in federal prison right now. And we are hoping, praying that the new president, Donald Trump, will pardon these pro-lifers, some of whom are in jail, including Joan Andrews Bell again. The rejection issue, she wrote prison letters back in the 1980s when she was in prison in Florida for a rescue that she did at I think it was an abortion center in Pensacola, Florida. And as you reject them, you reject me. So the unborn suffer the ultimate rejection. There's just no way, there's no argument. It is the ultimate rejection. And from their own mothers, their own fathers, maybe even their own grandmothers and fathers and whoever's helping the woman get the abortion. And so you do feel that you're one with them in terms of not being understood, right? Not being understood. So, the book, chronicles about over 20 years of pro-life activism. And I talk about sidewalk counseling, the moms that we turned away. I talk about the rescues that we did. I talk about going to court, being on trial, and going to jail. As you reject them, so you reject me. I mean, I think this is a very illuminating part of the book is what we faced when we went to court with the sanitized trials, right? The unborn will remain invisible. There is no injury caused when abortions are performed. That's right out of the mouth of Judge Patricia McMahon and the other attorneys in Chicago from that first rescue that we did back in 1978. The unborn remain invisible. No injuries are caused when abortions are performed that this court need take notice of. Why? Because abortion is a right. And so there's, in fact, rather recently, a lot more recently, we conducted a Red Rose Rescue. If people want to find out about that, you just go to Red Rose Rescue, easy, very easy, redroserescue.com. We did a Red Rose Rescue here in Michigan in April of 2022, and we went on trial because we're denied a defense of others. We were denied a defense of necessity because the unborn are not considered others, and there is no necessity to break the law in order to prevent a greater evil from occurring. That's called a defense of necessity, because there's no evil and there's no others that need to be defended. It's all a lie. It is insanity. I've even said so, in my book. For a pro-lifer to be in court, it's like you were the only sane person in an insane asylum. And the judge, when we got sentenced here in Michigan, I said to her in my sentencing statement, I said, Your Honor, in the objective world of right and wrong, I am not guilty. And her response was, I don't operate in the objective world. Whoa, I've been waiting 45 years for a judge to admit it, right? I don't operate in the objective world. Wow, that says it all right there. So then, of course, the book, in some ways, maybe the centerpiece is the finding of the rejected unborn, literally in the trash containers from the abortion centers, our retrievals, the photography that we did, the burials that we planned for them, and so on. So this is as I said, it's the front row seat from a pro-lifer's experience, literally with the victims of abortion.
Yes. Yeah, talking with Dr. Monica Miller about her book, Abandoned. So much in this book, so important. And yeah, you have a very unique perspective as one who was a young person as all of this starts taking place, Roe and beyond. And so you're responding. You're responding as an act of conscience, as an act of love, to do the good in the face of this. And you see, various decisions that you make along the way from, yes, countless hours of sidewalk counseling. You get involved with, the remains of aborted children, murdered children from abortions, and trying to bring respect and bring awareness to what is going on here. You also, you're involved in sit-ins as sit-ins begin, ultimately becoming the rescue movement, and then the FACE Act in 1994. You saw it all. You were part of all of this. Even going to jail yourself many times. You write about this, about the first time that you did your first real jail term. You say that I decided that the only real way I would make it through the jail sentence was to accept absolutely everything about the injustice of it. I would not be bitter. I would not be angry. I would not wish that things were different. I would not act as if I had rights and they were being trampled upon. I tried to put on the attitude of Christ, who as God had all the rights in the universe, but gave them up to suffer for others. I found the key to enduring jail with peace, a total surrender of my will to the fact of being in prison. You go on to see the fruits of you being there, where people are telling you how other inmates saying how you have helped to change their lives in profound ways, helping one woman even to direct her to a specific priest when she gets out to go to confession, and just beautiful, the fruits of this, just by, again, doing the good that was in front of you all along the way. There's so much for us to learn in this. And one other aspect of the time there that I wanted to get across is just this sense of, look, there should be an obviousness to all of this when we're talking about abortion. It should be obvious. It should be common sense that we ought not be killing babies, murdering children every single day as we are in this nation and in this world. That ought to be obvious to everybody. There's no debate here. This is something that is obvious and common sense. And when you get down to just real people, inmates in prison, it was very common sense and obvious to them. It's like they're more sane and in tune to reality than the folks that are on the outside. These who have been convicted of these crimes, more sane than those who are not. As you come in there and they're like, you don't belong here. The ones who are killing the babies belong here, not you. I hate abortion, and this is what you're getting there. Anything else you want to share with us about this important time in your life?
Well, first of all, there have been arguments put forth that when a pro-lifer does a rescue and we get convicted and we're sentenced to jail, that somehow we're wasting our time. That, you should be out on the streets and doing all sorts of good for the moms and for the pro-life movement and so on and so forth. I got to say, when my jail experience, there's so many fruits. It was like our mission field. And we talked women out of abortions while we were in jail. We counseled them, guided them, gave them good example, help them with their own spiritual, giving them spiritual guidance and so on. It was, you take your faith and your pro-life convictions into jail with you, and we make a difference while we're doing that unjust jail time. So for people to say you're wasting your time, they have no idea what they're talking about. So let me just have a little rebuttal there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hear the music. We're going to hit this hard break, but yeah, I mean, look, there's a whole lot of people out there that say a whole lot of things. But when it comes to what we're talking about here with abortion, the legalized murder of innocent children, it doesn't matter what anybody says. Again, this is objective reality. This is truth. It's a scientific fact that life begins at fertilization. There's no debate here, right? The only debate is should it be okay to murder innocent human beings? And again, that ought to be obvious. If somebody's on the wrong side of that, look, there's not a whole lot to say other than, well, you're for murdering innocent human beings. I think you should rethink that. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Dr. Monica Miller talking about her book today, Abandoned, The Untold Story of the Abortion Wars. Phenomenal read. Highly recommend it. You can get it anywhere you find books, but stbenedictpress.com is the publisher, so you can certainly go there as well. So much in this book. Wish we had many hours to discuss it all, but I want to get Monica's thoughts to hit what she wants to hit in this book. But one more thing that really stands out strong for me, and I'd love to get your comment on it, Monica, and that is you talk about meeting your husband in doing the pro-life work, Edmund. You talk about how you were married, your wedding day in 1989, and talk about not normal, right? Just 3 months after your wedding, these newlyweds being separated by jail sentences that they both received, and your husband was the first to be going into prison, I believe. Actually, it was this is Robert. Actually, I want to talk about this. Robert Braun, who was beginning his 1 month jail term around this time as well, and you gave him this small crucifix. Now, this was significant. This was part of the trial. You had this on the defendant's table. In one portion of the book, you really reflect upon this in a beautiful way. But at this point, as Robert is getting his jail sentence, a 1 month term, he accepts this crucifix. You say his eyes full of gratitude. He thanked me and nodded his head, then walked alone through the doors of the jail. I think this is what separates so many who are active, versus those who are not. We can all see the objective reality, if we want to see it, of the simplicity of murdering children being wrong, and that this is what the reality is. But some actually hear that call of our Lord, whatever you do to the least of these, you do it unto me. So we all ought to be able to receive the reality, the truth of the evil that's going on. But some are going to have, I think, the required amount of love that is going to often come by grace to do what we ought to be doing in the face of it, to really try to do something. And so I see so much signified in this little crucifix, that you give to Robert here that was part of the trial. Anything you want to say as you reflect upon that little crucifix, the meaning of maybe what drives so many maybe to be able to be active whereas others are not?
Well, the crucifix was about 3 inches. Wooden, and actually, I think it's something I bought when I was in Europe, and I had that crucifix right in front of me on the defendant's table, and it struck me during our trial with Judge McMahon in 1987 that the unborn babies that we were taking out of the trash that very year that we were on trial was about the same size as the corpus that was on the crucifix. And so there was a certain correlation between the unborn child and the image on the crucifix. And so to give it to Robert, made a lot of sense. Robert was a Protestant, by the way. Okay. So he probably didn't really have a crucifix. But he very graciously accepted it just as he walked to turn himself over to serve his jail term.
What would you say? I guess some say, and you write about this in the book as well. Sometimes the reporters, they want to spin the narrative. They'd come and they would ask the folks that were involved in these various pro-life actions. They would say, well, what's your religion? And they would try to write that down and then try to spin the narrative that, oh, it's a bunch of religious people. That's what's wrong with them. That's why they're doing these things. But really, it's just a sense of goodness in the face of evil, that we all ought to have, regardless of anybody's faith. But at the same time, there is a faith aspect to our response is going to be stronger if we really have received the love of our Lord. We love him back. And then we truly do see the value of human life, because not just a sense of, we ought to care about each other on a natural level, but we really ought to love one another and identify them with the image and likeness of God, and say, I'm called to love people because God loved me, and he has identified himself with the least of these. Whatever I do to the least of these, I do it unto him. So there is a sense that our religion, our faith, specifically our Catholic faith, we ought to be more motivated by love to do more. That ought to be seen. Anything further you'd like to say on that? Well,
yes, our faith automatically instructs us, at least it should, to make a response when there are these grave evils that have corrupted our culture. I mean, you see that really clearly with the Christians and the Catholics, the Corrie ten Booms, for example, Oskar Schindler's for example, who, because of their faith, made a response to the Nazi Holocaust. And in the case of the ten Booms and the Sophie Scholls and the Dietrich Bonhoeffers and others, the Catholic priest, Father Delp, to make the response is because we know that these are grave evils that we are instructed that that's the case with our faith. And then our faith gives us the grace to endure, the sacrifices and the sufferings that may come from, the Maximilian Kolbes, to give ourselves so that others may live, is what Jesus wants us to do.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's hardly like, look at all these religious freaks. You have to be some sort of a religious freak to care about the mass murder of the preborn. More like, look at all of these people of faith that are actually doing what is a right response of goodness. Look at how their love and let them be known by their love, right? These Christians, it ought to be a good thing, but they try to spin it as this terrible thing. Like much with respect to all of this, we've got to flip the narrative back. This is very simple. Sadly, we've lost the narrative with the pro-abortion media, the legal system, and the way that all of this has been baked in. But we do have that trajectory of the evil of slavery, where it was all baked in back then, and there was a whole lot of people saying we're never going to get to the end of slavery, and the abolitionists pushed on. How do you see it in our time right now? What is the moment that you think we're in, and what encouragement do you give us today?
Well, the battle, sorry to say, is far, far from over. Okay, so we had the reversal of Roe v. Wade, but I wrote an article for Crisis Magazine, overturn Roe, but we need to overturn the philosophy of Roe v. Wade. And the philosophy of Roe, I even argue that Roe versus Wade wasn't simply a legal opinion by the Supreme Court. Roe v. Wade is actually a philosophy about what it means to be human. And the philosophy of Roe is that we are isolated individuals in the most radical sense. And ironically, the most isolated individual within humanity are women under Roe v. Wade. Isolated from husbands, isolated from boyfriends, isolated from parents, isolated in that right to privacy. The right to privacy is that bubble zone that was drawn around the woman, separating her completely out from the rest other people, and now in the bubble zone of her own isolation, her own autonomy, she makes a life and death decision over her unborn child. Is this the kind of world we want? So, moving forward, now that we're in the era of the Dobbs decision, unfortunately, I read every word of the Dobbs decision and the dissenting opinions as well. The Dobbs decision didn't go as far as it needed to go. I mean, I give Scalia, a lot of credit, but what should have happened is that in the Dobbs decision, the unborn child should have been recognized as a person under the 14th Amendment for the purposes of the right to life, and it didn't happen. So now we've got slave states and free states, and it's kind of a mess. I think that what the pro-life movement needs to do is educate. We need to convert this culture to recognize that unborn children are human persons, members of the human race, members of the human family, and that abortion is an injustice to a particular people group, the unborn. We need to cultivate and to educate the consciences of our society in order to repeal all of these state amendments that are now going into place that continue the killing of innocent dumb. So educate. Going door to door, the billboards, the TV ads, symposiums. We have billboards now. If you go to our website, prolifesociety.com, there's no hyphens, prolifesociety.com, you'll see that we have a billboard campaign here in the Detroit metro area. I really want to encourage people to take a look at the billboard that we have erected and to educate and to save babies from abortion.
Yes, Dr. Monica Miller is with us. prolifesociety.com is that website. It does come up throughout this book, what you're talking about here, personhood. You say here that the unborn will have their day in court. And this is back in 2012 when you wrote the book. You say Roe v. Wade said the unborn child is not a person. When we go to court, we will reveal their personhood, show their humanity. I believe you're actually quoting Joe Scheidler at the time, many years ago. And so here we are. We're in this post-Dobbs time, post-Dobbs, post-Roe. The Supreme Court did punt on personhood. It seems they're not going to take up the question, even though they ought to take it up squarely. It's up to them. What is the child in the womb? Is it not a person to be afforded equal rights under the 14th Amendment? What else could it possibly be? Every human being is a human person. It's a simple question that they need to answer, but they're not going to do it unless they're forced to do it. This is the moment we're in. The Men's March to Abolish Abortion, Rally for Personhood. We were very blessed to have Dr. Monica Miller a part of the last one in Boston that was quite eventful. But Monica, what is your thought on the moment before us right now? If we can get an executive, a governor of a state to sign an executive order affirming constitutional personhood in the state for the preborn child, that would then kick it very quickly, not only to the state Supreme Court, but to the U.S. Supreme Court and the executive of the land that we have right now. We need him to do some things. We certainly need him to pardon those pro-lifers that are in jail right now, still waiting on that. Maybe tomorrow at the time of the March for Life, we'll see if that happens, if they kind of time it out that way, who knows. But even bigger, we need an executive order on personhood from President Trump that would force the Supreme Court to answer the question. The current makeup of the court is very favorable. I don't see how they can answer the question any other way than the right way, that abortion is unconstitutional. Of course, these preborn children are human beings. That's a scientific fact. And of course, every human being is a person with equal protection under the laws. We're going to be right back at Monica's response. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Dr. Monica Miller talking about her book, Abandoned, the Untold Story of the Abortion Wars Today. You can also go to the website prolifesociety.com to learn more about Monica's good work. And, we had Martin Luther King Jr. Day just a few days ago, same day as Inauguration Day. And the quote by MLK, that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. In this case, the oppressed cannot speak for themselves, the preborn child, children who are being mass murdered every day. We must speak up for them and demand this oppression to end on their behalf and on behalf of all humanity. And so here we are, this moment where calling for personhood, demanding that the Supreme Court take up a case and rule on personhood. Should we even be demanding from our executives, from the very top, President Trump right now, to sign an executive order on personhood? What is your thought on this strategy, on these tactics, Monica?
Well, no, I think you've outlined the path very well. Whether that path is actually going to get walked is another issue. Just to be honest, Trump already said that he was done. He's basically done with the abortion issue. He reversed Roe v. Wade, and I think in his how did he put it? Everybody wanted it to go back to the states. Who is he speaking for, right? Everybody, even pro-lifers. the right to life is a yes or a no, depending on what state you live in. That's what we want? That is not what we want. Okay, so, and he's already said Trump has said he's not going to do anything to establish a federal ban on abortion. Now, maybe he'll change his mind. I suppose that's possible, and maybe we should be urging that he do so. But I think I'm saying with some safety that when it comes to the practice of abortion in this post-Dobbs environment, Trump is finished. He said, and he basically signaled that is the case. You go back and you look at the debate that he had with Biden in June of 2024. Though he misrepresented the Supreme Court decision regarding the Iowa case on the chemical abortion pills, nonetheless, he said that he approved access to the chemical abortion pills. So like I said, I mean, I got to take him at his word until I hear differently. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, still urging, especially at the congressional level, to get all that we can out of a Trump presidency to limit the killing of unborn children. And that's what we should be doing.
Absolutely, yeah. And if not him, then we just kind of work down the ladder. Can we find a governor who's willing to sign an executive order on personhood? Certainly calling for Governor DeSantis in Florida. If he's not favorable, what about Governor Abbott in Texas? A governor in a deep red state. Can we get them to take such an action that would then force the Supreme Court to take this up? So we need to keep pushing in this direction, and that's what we're going to try to do. But with respect to the book Abandoned here, again, you published it in 2012. Anything that now, 13 years after the book, anything that you'd want to add as a sort of postscript, anything that comes to mind today, Monica?
Well, as I'm fond of saying, the right to life of the unborn is not going to be reestablished by thinking pro-life thoughts. It's going to be established by pro-life action. And I think we need to take stock in the reality that ending this injustice is going to require being inconvenienced. We have to be making real sacrifices, and we shouldn't be afraid to do so. In some ways, really, maybe you will agree with me, but the centerpiece of this book is really maybe the climax of my pro-life action that I narrate in this book has to do with the actual victims of abortion. I'm probably really one of 50 people in the entire world that has had the experience of finding and retrieving the actual bodies of aborted babies from abortion center trash containers. And then in 1988, our whole experience with the pathology lab in Northbrook, Illinois. We started our retrievals from this loading dock in North. It was at a pathology lab. There's a long story there about how we found out, but let's just say we found out that the pathology lab was leaving the boxes of aborted babies out on the loading dock for medical waste pickup. And we started our retrieval project in February of 1988. We ended it in end of October of 1988, and at the end we had over 5,000 bodies that we had retrieved from the Vital Med pathology lab loading dock. And so the experience of actually seeing with your own eye and holding with your own hands the rejected, unwanted, unborn, and certainly as people read my book, it was the most impactful spiritual and psychological, maybe even intellectual experience that I had in realizing the real injustice of abortion. And the beautiful thing about this book is by the way, if you go to tanbooks.com, it'll easily take you just do a search on Abandoned, because St. Benedict Press is an imprint of Tan Books, TAN, tanbooks.com. In some ways, it's a little more easier way to get to the book. So you do a search on when you get to that website. But they did not, this is not a cheaply produced book. Right? It feels nice in your hands. It's got a beautiful dust jacket. One of the babies that we got from the Vital Med, they didn't hold back. That's somewhat airbrushed, okay, but that hand of a 14-week aborted baby is right on the front cover of the dust jacket. And there are photographs, fantastic photographs, color photos, and so on in that book. So they went whole hog in producing this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the reality of what abortion isn't clear to you, it will be clear in your encounter with this book, and we need to face reality. That's the first step, to face reality, then take personal responsibility, and to repent of what we've done, what we haven't done, make a new resolve to do more, to do better, to make acts of reparation. There is so much that is before us, and this book is very helpful in so many ways. Monica, anything else you want to share with us today? Any final points? Any final comments for us?
Well, I could direct people to some of our videos that we have up on YouTube. The very babies that we buried in 1988 are featured in a video called Requiem for the Disappeared. So you just put that in the search engine there, search box at YouTube, Requiem for the Disappeared, a 5-minute video with original music that was composed for it about the burials that we did in 1988. Again, Requiem for the Disappeared. And feel free, of course, to share that link and send it out to other people.
Awesome. Yeah, Dr. Monica Miller, what a blessing you are. Thank you so much for sharing some of this book with us today. Again, folks can go to tanbooks.com. Also check out the website, prolifesociety.com. Lots of great resources mentioned in this show today, so go back and find them. But God bless you all.